Hello, everyone. How y'all doing? Hope you are having a good Friday. Not that it is Good Friday, but every Friday has the potential to be good, whether it's religiously motivated or not. Um, I'm having a pretty good Friday. It's sped right by. I can't believe it's already 3 p.m. That's pretty nuts. But here we are. It's another edition of Draft Diary. We're on episode 24. Episode 24, chapter 34. The episodes and chapters are 10 apart. For the time being, that's probably going to change in the near future. We'll find out, though. Chapter 34, we come here to the Pilgrim. Bit of a doozy of a chapter, not as big as the next one, but pretty hefty nonetheless. The notes, for those who have keen vision, unlike myself, those who have keen vision will note that there's 17 pages. 17 pages of notes. I'm going to try to get through these. I think this is the largest compendium of notes of all the draft diaries. Don't quote me on that, but I think it is. I haven't checked. I haven't checked the others. I checked chapter 35's notes, and they're only 15 pages. So we get off easy next week. The jump from like 8 to 17, 8 last week, 17 this week is quite the doozy. I'll try my best to summarize where I can, but I have not had the time to go through these with a fine-tooth comb. So I'll try to summarize, but I might just end up babbling. And we all know how easy it is for me to end up babbling. Longtime viewers, anyway. I don't think I have anything great to say right off the hop here. Chapter 34 picks up pretty much right where chapter 33 left off. Funny how things in a chronological order work like that. The chapter does a lot. There's a lot of moving. There's a lot of transitioning in this chapter. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, this is really where the book gets a little more heavy. The tone doesn't shift. It's just kind of like the shifting culminates. The shifting settles in this chapter, and we finally set upon a bit more of a dour tone. The lightheartedness definitely takes a back seat throughout these last chapters. You'll find out why as we go along. If you're just picking up this episode, then hey, welcome to my book. You can read it. You can read the first draft on AO3. I'm working on the second draft right now. It's in the doobly-doo. It's in the video description. You can go read it. You can go read the first chapter and read all 33 preceding chapters, and then come back here and watch this episode. I'll wait. It's fine. I got all day. Okay, while they're busy, everyone, they're going to watch the VOD. Everyone who's here presently right now, we're just going to keep going without that person. All right? Okay? No hard feelings? Okay, great. So we're going to continue. I've got my chapter summary here. I managed to do this much before the episode started. So let's hop in. Like I said, there's a lot of moving parts to chapter 34. Chapter 34 begins with Teal waking up. Can you fathom that? That I've been mentioning how we were in a dream sequence, and the last episode was about how we're getting to the end dream sequence. Well, hey, guess what? This episode starts off and Teal wakes up. She pretty much immediately has a really bad time because she can't tell if her dreams were dreams or if they were maybe memories. She spends a good chunk of this first segment just ruminating. Maybe crying a little bit, maybe trying not to cry more so. She tries to pull herself together. She does her best. There's a lot of introspection throughout here. But she pulls herself together enough to depart from the sage. And she kind of does that under the pretext of, yep, I'll go do that thing we talked about. I'll go compromise, right? They were talking about this compromise where the sage was like, okay, well, you can go to the tower, but just come back. Go to the tower and come back here, and we'll all be hunky-dory, okay? Great, thanks, Teal. Teal, however, is probably not going to do that, but more on that later. She leaves from the sage. She departs from the sage. And they do so pretty amicably. There's a bit of, let's call it fluff, not like romantic fluff, but there's like a little bit of world building in there. And yeah, the rest of the chapter is mostly about Teal traveling. She goes about her way. She picks up back on the path in the direction that she was hinted at by the sage. And she's on her way. And while traveling, Teal is noticeably morose. And as mentioned, very introspective. She's really contemplative, meditative. She's dwelling on not only her dreams, but just her present state, her current conundrum, if you'll pardon me in alliteration. She's really torn between wanting to sift through her mind, her psyche, all these things that are bothering her, all of these things that are bubbling up that are only half truths and half realities. And she's torn between that and also just not wanting to deal with the pain that comes with realizing that maybe you had a cat boyfriend. Maybe you had a cat boyfriend and you went to magic school. She's not taking it very well. She doesn't take it very well. But she's walking along. She's really struggling between the dichotomy of active thought and passive existence. She really just wants to get to the bell tower at this point. She's walking along. I'm not scrolling here. Pardon me. I'm not scrolling. We'll scroll as we go along. She's walking along, and she comes to this straightaway. It's kind of a path in the valley, or rather, the path winds its way through a valley. It's a bit of a straightaway. And at first, it doesn't really dawn on her until she notices in a more clear manner that there's people, there are bodies, there are figures lining the path. And at first, they're at a distance. At first, they're minding their own business. Teal's trying to, ignore them. But the further she goes along, the further she realizes that A, there's more of them, and B, they're quite strange. And these figures are strange because, lo and behold, they're elves. It's pretty easy to discern an elf at a distance from their physical appearance, long ears and all that. And Teal notes a lot of other strange things with the elves. They're creepy. To put it plainly, they're very creepy. They're a little harrowing. And these elves are in the process of, populating this pathway. They seem to grow in number, to swell. And they kind of just end up like berating Teal, almost chastising her with this weird spectral chant. It's not exactly a comfortable situation. So, being heckled by a drove of, I don't want to go outright and say they're undead, but they're maybe not alive. Teal books it. Teal legs it. She gets the heck out of dodge. While she's running, she's sprinting, she's running, she's trying to get away from this path, trying to get away from the elves. She slips. Some wet mud, you know how it is. You slip on wet mud. It happens to everyone. And she wipes out. She takes a tumble. I have an itch on my nose, sorry. And she's pretty battered. While she's trying to, her senses are beleaguered. She notes that somebody's rushed up to her, someone with a pointy hat. They rush up to check on her. And, hey, yeah, lo and behold, it's the chapter's namesake. It's the pilgrim. They help her up. Teal's a little barbed at first, barbative. She has her defenses up, right? I mean, if you just fell, somebody rushes over to help you up, your first instinct isn't to be super compassionate. But eventually the two begin to talk. And Teal seems really eager to be on her way. But the pilgrim is, they kind of chat. They chat with Teal a little bit. And they're telling her all about, like, yeah, I've actually been to the bell tower, if you can believe it. Teal doesn't, but the longer they talk, the more information she gets out of the pilgrim. And The Pilgrim offers all sorts of information about the bell tower, but I think most importantly, they end up warning her about the dangers preceding the bell tower. And Teal's pretty confused by this. The sage had mentioned, there might be some obstacles in the way, but she wasn't really informed of any potential dangers. So that's not good. You don't want to hear that there's imminent danger on the path ahead, but she already kind of had a hint. She knew it wasn't going to be easy. She knew this wasn't going to be a walk in the park. So as she's talking to the pilgrim, she's not really fretting, but she is cementing within herself this idea that, like, okay, yep, I've just got to keep pressing onward. So the pilgrim warns her about all these dangers. We'll get more into that later as to what the dangers actually are. And yeah, the pair speak at length, but Teal's pretty insistent on moving on. The pilgrim's like, maybe you shouldn't do this. Maybe you shouldn't go there. I was just there and I kind of had a bad time, but I go there because I'm a spiritual weirdo. And Teal basically says, well, I have to go there. So tough luck, pal. So Teal insists on forging ahead, but by the end of the chapter, the two depart on amicable terms. And that's where the chapter ends, with the two kind of going their own ways. Which doesn't sound extravagant, but, it's all about the details. It's all about the finer things. It's hard to really put that into perspective when, you're summarizing a chapter. So let's dive in here, right? Let's get right to the notes. So we got to circle back all the way to the start, right? Teal just woke up. And the first thing that hits her is that she's not really sure if, we've been talking about this throughout the book, that Teal finally comes to the realization that maybe time doesn't exist here. Maybe time doesn't really have a meaning. What time is it? I'm not sure. She kind of thinks these things, but I think we just mention it too overtly. We're too on the nose about how, yes, this is what Teal thinks. Yes, Teal thinks, oh, there's what is time doing here? I don't know. IDK. And so that's just something we have to adjust throughout much of this beginning section, is Teal's perspective needs to be adjusted. We should hint at the idea, right, that maybe Teal's coming to this conclusion that I'm not sure if time actually passed, but the text should never outright say it. The narration nor Teal should outright say, I do not think that time is relevant here. We got to let the readers pick those bricks up for themselves. I use the phrase "for who knows how long" somewhere through this segment here, and that overarching idea, that encapsulating concept works much better for what I'm trying to go for here. Also, this notion of, this repeating mantra of does any of this really matter? Something we could tie in here as well. We get to this section early on where Teal's debating, were those just dreams? Were they maybe just memories? And throughout it all, she's just too precise. She's too clear on what she remembers about her dreams. And on top of that, weighing that perception with her memories is also too focused. Teal should be much more unsure throughout this segment. It should be her uncertainty that is weighing down on her heart. She can't come to terms with the idea that, that was just a dream, or, oh no, like she's not certain that these were memories or they were dreams. It's the balance between the two that's upsetting her. Were she completely dismissive and able to say, okay, yeah, those were just crazy dreams, then she'd just throw them out of her head. She'd start ignoring them. But on the reverse side, if she knew they were memories, if she was certain on that, then she could lock that away and she could be, okay, well, here's what I remember. That's great. But the fact these vague recollections came to her in her sleep and they were distorted in perception means she can't be comfortable with either result. She should really just sit through this with a very wistful sentiment, feeling oddly connected to some parts and disjointed from others. And ultimately, she should sort of come to this conclusion that she questions herself. She asks herself, "Am I still dreaming?" And that should step from there to have Teal wonder if maybe all of this is a dream. If she just woke up, or maybe she still hasn't woken up. Maybe since the moment she got out of that boat, the moment she woke up on the river, she's been dreaming. Maybe this has all just been a dumb dream. Not that we give her a lot of time to really wallow in that, but it should be something she mulls over in her stupor here at the beginning of the episode. The beginning of the chapter. Y'all know what I mean. So Teal gets pretty frustrated here, and she has a moment where she's like feeling like she's gonna puke. She's thinking that she's gonna cry, and she's frustrated, and she doesn't know how to express herself. And so that culminates in her hucking her dagger across the room. She just, she fell asleep with it under her pillow. I think she actually wakes up with it in her fists, right? We like tie together the idea that she had this knife at the end of the last chapter, and then she wakes up with the dagger in her fists, kind of like stretched out in front of her. In her fists, in her, hands, she's holding it. She's not punching the dagger. It's not stabbed into her knuckles. That'd be ridiculous. But so she gets frustrated and she throws this knife across the room. And we should it just happens, right? We're told she's holding the knife, and then she just pitches it. She just pitches the knife, and it doesn't exactly come out of nowhere. We're told she's holding the knife. We're told at the end of the chapter, like, we're given the connection. And then we're told she's upset, but she just hucks the knife. She just throws it for no rhyme or reason. And that's a little unfortunate. We need to build up to this frustration, build up to this anguish that she is unable to express properly, and that she lashes out kind of unrationally by throwing this precious object of hers, one of the few things that she arrived on the shores with. The sentiment itself, I think, is fine, but we need to cap off this incline towards anger, towards this like bottled rage. We need to have a better release. It's almost as if, like to use the same illusion, if this is a bottled rage, it's almost that we just take the cork right off and boop, there it goes. It all comes out at once. And instead we want something of a slow release. We want this to be the final bit that comes out of that slow release. We understand where she's going, what she's doing, how she's feeling, and then this is how she's expressing herself, by throwing something that she cares about across the room because she's exasperated. So as mentioned, she's kind of on the verge of tears. She doesn't actually cry, which is important, but she's having a bad time. She definitely is feeling the sting of tears at her nose. And I think it's important to note that these tears are born of aggravation. She's going through this moment where she's having these recollections of romance, of nostalgia, of heartache and familial connection. And there's nothing she can really do about it. It's just that. It's just these wispy vapors that she can't even grasp at. They're just kind of floating by. She can recognize them, but what is she going to do with that? What is she going to do with, like, oh, I think I danced with a cat guy. Okay, that's great. Oh, I think I kind of remember my sister and feeling guilty about my parents and also being mad at my dad. Super, awesome. Okay, what are we going to do with that? Probably nothing. And so she's in this moment of, trying to come to terms with that. Hello, Robin. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. That did take you a long time. You were gone like half an hour. Robin had to go to the post office, everyone. Anyways, Teal's upset. What Teal expresses here, her feelings are very valid, but as mentioned, they should be muddier. They should be wispier. These should be things that she can't really pin down. She can't explain why she's upset because they don't have a core. They don't have an essence that she can track to their source and say, oh, okay, well, this is why I'm upset. She just sees kind of the middle part and is like, oh, well, I kind of long for that. I kind of wish I could have that. Why can't I? Where is it? What is it? I don't even know that much. Where did it come from? I don't know. Where am I in this grand picture? I must be part of it because I remember it, but then why am I disjointed from it? Um, this idea that, especially on the one hand, right, regarding the Swain, um, her only the only thing she has to cling to regarding maybe these being memories is the fact that she is potentially in love with a smudge from a dream, a white and blue smudge that she can't really remember very well. She can't put a name to it. She can't put like a place to it. And that's not good, right? That's not a good feeling. She's forlorn. She's she's longing for a thing she can't even remember. Um, and yeah, basically, this is just me saying it's all fine. This is a great time for Teal to be reflecting, but I think we need to know why she's reflecting. We need to kind of incidentally, right? I was just saying that she's too precise. I think with regards to these thoughts, we need to understand precisely why she's having them. I don't think they need to be written super precisely. I don't think the reader needs to go, oh, yes, these are precise and confined feelings. Um, but the reader should be going through the segment and thinking, okay, yes, I understand why Teal is upset. Here's what she is thinking. Here's how she is feeling. These are the reasons why. Great, I get it. But like those sentiments themselves need to be murky. The reason Teal is upset here is because those reasons are murky, right? It's all intertwined together. So we cap off this preamble before Teal departs, before she like gets ready to depart anyway, by having her thoughts fade into a timeless notion. And that's good. We can work some like poetic imagery in there with some envelope phrasing. And we maybe want to do this to suggest that Teal's becoming aware of how the world around her is timeless, how time really doesn't have any meaning here. And to further cement the idea that she is conceding to it, right? So we started the chapter with Teal sort of realizing that things are funky here. And then before she departs, we should have her wrestle with that idea, and then maybe not come to terms with it, but put it in a box somewhere inside of her and just go, okay, well, this is beyond me. I can't really deal with it. So I guess this is my life now. Concede to it, I guess. Is that what I just said earlier? Maybe it is. Anyways, whatever. That's kind of where she should be at before she departs. Yeah, it says it right there in my notes. I'm done. Anyways, whatever. So before we proceed, that's just for my notes, actually. We don't, whatever. The order of these can happen in whatever sequential proclivity I fancy. These are my notes. I can say them however I want. I could read them backwards if I want. I'm not going to do that. That'd be funny, though. So we make no mention of a pain of any kind, of any pain for Teal, especially with regards to her chest. And we kind of brought this up throughout the dream sequence, a little here, a little there, not really. But especially here, as she's languishing, she should be feeling physical sensations. She should be hurting. More than just heartache, she should be physically in pain. We don't want to be too overt about it. We don't want to bring this up too often. This is something we are going to build upon. It's something that we mention at the start and forget about throughout most of the book. And then as Teal goes through the dream sequence and comes out of it, this is where we should pick it back up. And we don't want to be too heavy-handed with it. We don't want to be mentioning it constantly and having Teal dwell on the fact that her chest is in pain and think about, try to reason why she's hurting. Um, this shouldn't be something that she is stuck on. It's just something that happens, right? It should just happen here. She should kind of grimace and deal with it, and just like, this can be a point that even draws her from her thoughts, is this notion that, oh, ooh, ow, ouchie, my chest hurts. But we don't want to keep bringing it up. We don't want to dwell on it too much here. We don't want to sit on it. But this, right, having her linger on these thoughts, having her go through this dream sequence, this would be the optimal spot to bring it up. I don't know how many times we're going to bring it up earlier before we get to kind of the climax, the culmination of the book. But if nothing else, like, this is the best spot for it. Right here, when she's at her kind of at a low point. I shouldn't say the lowest point. She's definitely at a low point coming out of this dream sequence. This would be when we should touch on it. But we should do so with subtlety and nuance, befitting Teal's affliction. Teal's a little like moment with Lacrimosa here, and that's good and that's fine. But given how we're making edits to chapter 33, especially the ending, we have to be careful. We don't want to outright mention how Teal sits here and thinks, oh yeah, there was a moth in my dream, right? That completely deflates what we're trying to do earlier. It completely takes all the wind out of the sails of the imagery, of the relationships we're trying to build at the end of the dream sequence. If we just have Teal in the next moment go, oh yeah, the moth from my dream, right? There's no nuance to that. There's no love to it. There's no grace. We can let readers figure this out, right? The readers are smart people. They deserve to be treated as such. Deserve. It's like an hors d'oeuvre, but a deserve. I don't know what I'm saying. Just ignore me. I mean, don't ignore me completely. You can ignore that bit. You got to keep listening, though. I mean, you clicked on the video. Come on. You got to listen. Robin's here listening. That means y'all got to listen. If one little bird is willing to sacrifice himself, then the rest of you do too? Oh, whatever. You can leave if you want. I ain't going to hold it against you. In fact, statistically speaking, most of you have already left. We're half an hour into the stream. There's like an astronomically low percentage of people who make it past the first 2 minutes of these streams. I don't even think most people make it through the music I put in at the start, which is pretty funny. But I digress. We want to keep this little scene with Lacrimosa. It's cute, it's nice, but we need to be careful not to ruin the effects that we're building up from the previous chapter. So we reach this moment of culmination regarding Teal's reflection. Literally, I mean that literally. Teal there spies a mirror across the room, and she starts to wonder, oh, what, have I seen my reflection? I was definitely washing up when I got in here previously before I went to sleep, but I don't remember actually seeing myself in that big mirror. And it starts to dawn on her, wait a minute, have I actually seen my reflection anywhere? And this is the period of culmination where it dawns on her, much like it's dawning on her that time is maybe a little funky here. She starts to notice, oh, maybe light is a little funky here. Why can't I see my reflection? What's going on with that? And this moment itself is fine. The way it comes across, the way it happens is all good and organic, but I think given the way draft 1 is written, it doesn't work very well. It doesn't sing very well because we've had very few instances of Teal dwelling on whether or not she can see her reflection. And this is a big reason why we need to incorporate more of those acts in the second draft, in drafts going forward. For example, the pond by the artist. Did she see herself there? Did she see herself in the window on the train? Did she see herself in any sort of metal, in any sort of glass? Has she seen herself in Lacrimosa's lantern? Why haven't we talked about any of that? And when we get to this moment, it doesn't really make sense when Teal pulls away, when Teal feels reluctant to uh, look at her reflection, right? Literally look at her reflection, but also to figuratively reflect upon herself, right? We get this period where she's evidently very hesitant to self actualize, to come to terms with who she is or like what's going on. And it doesn't read very well because we haven't been talking about it at all. Um, and that's just this is why this is me finally getting around to explaining why it's important. It's important because we need this scene to explain that yeah, Teal is probably a little afraid. She doesn't want to because she's worried. She's terrified, maybe even to look at herself, to look herself in the eye and come to terms with who she is as an individual. Especially given the way the trajectory of her life has gone up until this point. And we can dig in more at that, but I think there's another time for that, and now really isn't it because we've got 15 more pages of notes to go through. So we'll just move on from here. A small little thing I recommend here is like where are the heartbeats. This would be the perfect spot for the heartbeats to make a comeback. Um, Missed opportunity there for sure. And then these last few points are me just kind of battering myself. I wonder why or if she would have seen her reflection in the dream sequence at all. Um, Maybe that's a space where we can be more overt about there being a lack of reflection. Um, just so that when Teal gets back to the quote unquote real world, she has a point of reference. She has, but it's like a sloppy point of reference. It's not very good. It's not tangible because she's pretty sure it was a dream. But then if it was a dream and she is still dreaming, would that not confirm her suspicions that she's still dreaming? Right? If the logic holds true and she knows there was a point in her life where she could see her reflection, would it not prove her right if she could go up to a mirror right now and not see her reflection? Would that maybe dispel her from this dream that she's locked herself in? Um, and with that, it just builds upon the central theme that yeah, Teal's just kind of afraid. She doesn't really want to come to that truth because that truth is maybe something she doesn't want to wrestle with right now. She's already dealing with enough, and any more. The possibility of her being stuck inside a dream is maybe just a little too much for her, the plate of her mind to hold. Um, yeah, we'll move on from there. That's kind of just the end little idea I've got. So that the sequence with the mirror, um, is basically the full stop. I even mention here, right? Do y'all see this? Teal's heart thumped with the realization. And I don't use the motif. I don't bring back the heartbeat motif. What am I doing? What am I on? She even says here, maybe I am still dreaming. Okay, great. What am I doing? I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. This sequence where Teal comes to term with the possibility of her not having a reflection caps off what I want to call the first section of the chapter. What part are we in? Part 3, chapter 34, part 1, right? We're breaking the chapters into parts now. And we actually kind of do that later, but geez, that's for a different chapter. But Teal finally decides to leave. To cut to the chase, Teal finally decides to leave, and we just have the smash cut. We just straight up, she's outside the sage's tower and she's talking to them. She goes from departing the room to just like, nope, I'm leaving. And honestly, I kind of like it. I think it's fine. We don't need this whole drawn out sequence, but I think we should mention, right? And this is kind of confusing to say. I think we should mention that we are doing a smash cut. just doing it, okay, it works, but I think if we just lead readers through it a little bit by saying something like, okay, yeah, Teal's just so worked up right now that she doesn't really notice. She doesn't see anything. She's just kind of going through the moment. The next thing she knows, so to speak, she's outside the tower saying goodbye to the sage. Just so we can tie the reason why there's a smash cut into the narrative. It exists, yes, it's still a smash cut, but here are the reasons why. It's because Teal is pretty out of it right now. And that's all there is to it. I think that would just resolve the issue if we just mention it and move on with our lives, like I'm going to right now by moving on with the next point. They talk about sleeping, the sage and Teal. They talk about sleeping, and we should have Teal apply some more reluctance to the admission of sleep. She really, and I get why I do this. I'm trying to make her seem weary and exhausted because she did sleep, but she really didn't rest. There were no benefits to her taking this break. It really didn't do her any good as far as her energy and spirit are concerned. So I just think we should add a little bit more here. Like we should have her mention that the bedroom was great. The bed was comfortable. But we should exemplify that Teal's really not sure how to express herself with regards to, oh yeah, I think I had dreams that might have been key parts of my past life, and I think I might also be in love with a cat. A really hunky cat man. And she's just not sure how to put that into words to the sage here. Which, yeah, I get it. I feel you, girl. And just overall, right? This overall departure should hold aloft this idea of reluctance. Both of them should express this desire for the other to stay. Not really the other. In Teal's case, it's just that she wants to stay. But they should express this through their actions without ever really saying it. Both of them are thinking this on a subconscious level, but neither of them actively pursue it because they realize that doing so would be detrimental for the other. And once again, not so much the other in Teal's sake, but just for herself. Teal wants to stay really badly, but she knows that if she does, she's probably just going to languish. She's probably never really going to get her memories back. She's never going to discover where she came from or what happened to her. And the sage realizes this. The sage is kind of giving her a safer option by saying, yeah, you can stay here and be comfortable and like just take on a new life. And yeah, that would be more comfortable. That would be great, but it would come at the cost of foregoing her old life, which, maybe wasn't great. She can't even remember it that well, but it is hers, isn't it? So we just need to tighten this up by having the two act a little more and be more hesitant throughout their exchange. We do technically mention where the two are in space, but I get really lost in this conversation as to like where the two are standing. And I think part of that is because we chased Teal away from the tower too quickly. So we're kind of doubling back here on the idea of having a smash cut. I think we can still have the smash cut and keep this conversation here as long as there's more observation, right? And the idea of tying in reluctance and hesitation, we can also build upon having more observations. Teal can observe things, can see things, she can notice things that are around her that place her in space relative to the sage. They might walk down the laneway, linger at the gate. Teal might spy certain plants here or there. She might say, she might notice going through the threshold of the door. It could be anything, but as long as we put the pair in space, it will help the scene a lot better. And it will also help Reed, right? She's kind of deflecting. She does this a lot at the start of the book where she's deflecting because of her current state. She doesn't want to think, so she's like, okay, well, instead of thinking, I'll just notice things that are around me. And we can bring that idea back by saying, she notices this and that because she doesn't want to say these things to the sage. She doesn't want to reveal what's on her mind. Um, there's apparently an invisible servant, one of the sage's invisible servants here, and we don't talk about them. We don't say a single thing about them, and that's kind of, we say they're there. We say they're holding an umbrella. Okay, great. That's super. But like, we could put them in space. We could do that super easily by just having Teal notice that the raindrops are bouncing off of them. Maybe this is the first time Teal's really getting a good sense for the figure, for the mass, the invisible mass that one of these servants encompasses. And we can just say it's vaguely human in shape. Um, that's it. We should incorporate one of these servants into the scene because it's there, but we don't talk about it at all, and that's kind of a missed opportunity. Um, so we get to this idea that Teal is saving face. She's putting on a mask here. She kind of feels as though she's more exhausted than she was prior to going for this sleep. And that's great. That's good. We do a good job of exemplifying it here. But I think at this state, Teal would be trying to maintain this air of decorum. She makes no effort right now to thank the sage, to appreciate their hospitality. Um, and it shouldn't be until she leaves, until she departs the sage, that these doubts and these insecurities start to swirl and flood her mind. Um, there's a balance here, though. We never outright want Teal to think, if I make it back. Um, Teal is under the impression that, yes, something dangerous is waiting, but she can probably overcome it. Teal's pretty confident that, like, yeah, things will work out. Things will be fine. I'll just come back to the sages. I'll just go to the tower and come back to the sages. Or I'll figure out what's going on at the bell tower. Like, Teal's kind of in this situation where it's a win-win. She can go to the tower and figure things out and get her memory back, or she can go to the tower and say, this is scary, and then come back to the sage. Teal's in a position of, well, I'll be fine either way. But she's still worried. She still knows there's danger. There's still obstacles awaiting her. So we don't want to punctuate the narrative here by suggesting that Teal is feeling too much fear, that she's worried that things could become potent or deadly. Right now, she's just kind of under the assumption that, like, things could maybe get a little harrowing, but I should be fine. On top of not really knowing what to expect, she should just, she's, kind of brave. She's willing to play the odds, so to speak. Throughout this conversation, it leads to Teal kind of confessing almost where she studied. And that's good. I think it's good for the narrative overall if we come to that point. But I think we need to inject this segment with some other elements. Because just being told, yeah, I studied at Tabula Rasa doesn't mean anything. It doesn't hold any weight. Especially given that Teal throughout here doesn't reflect how she's feeling. It's important that we take note that, yes, Teal is becoming listless. She's losing her charm. She's starting to speak with, an elegance, a tactlessness, a sort of blunt edge. She's not at the point where she's being callous, but, the mask, as mentioned, her decorum, her face, her outward face is starting to deteriorate. She's just so exhausted that she's starting to crumble. She's falling apart at the seams, that she just can't even put in the effort to use her please and thank yous. I don't like, and this is going to be a spot of contention because, yes, we do want her to be trying to maintain that level of grace, those manners that we're accustomed to seeing Teal with, but we need to start seeing that, there's some phrase developing here. There's Teal starting to slip. And, throughout this segment, talking about Tabula Rasa is a really important bit for that to take place. Um, we should almost have this bit where, having something subtle like Teal just blinking really slowly, as if she's struggling to focus, as if her eyes can't keep up with her brain, or vice versa. Um, so we get this idea that yes, she's tired, yes, she's exhausted, but she is still leaving. She is still departing, despite it all. And we need to do things like this because I don't know if the weight of her decision really comes across here. I don't know if it reads well enough that Teal is literally sending herself off to her doom. She knows what she's doing, right? Like we were just talking about, she's under the impression that yes, this will be difficult. She doesn't know it's going to be harrowing, but she still is purposefully going about her life. Yeah, I figured, Robin. I appreciate it. No big deal. This is a podcast, anyways. So, well, it is now. So I'm just ignoring chat. I just always ignore chat. I don't ignore chat, obviously. I just saw Robin's comments, but yes, for those watching, I'm laser focused right now. Please listen to me while you cook your dinner. I am most appreciative. Yeah, we need to build the fact that Teal is leaving on her own accord more apparent. And this is all just like to backtrack. We need to do this because it will help what Teal says, what she reveals to the sage, have more weight. All in all, we just need to give this a nice coat of paint. This conversation just needs some sprucing up. We don't use this opportunity at all to reveal that the sage maybe remembers. Like we kind of just, where are they? They just say the tabula rasa, right? As if they're in awe of this revelation. But that's not really good enough. We need to have this note of remembrance. It's important that the sage not only is in awe of tabula rasa, but has some vague connection to it. It's good that we hint at the school's pedigree, but we just need something really small here, really delicate, that says, yeah, the sage maybe knows a bit more about that school than they're letting on. Not that they really have the chance to say it, right? With Teal just kind of flying out the window here. But we want to imply that the sage was maybe once a professor, that they were maybe some sort of teaching faculty. Just because, right, we're building this really flimsy arc. It's a really small arc regarding the sage that they might in a past life have been some sort of academic advisor. And this is how we're going to finish that bridge. We're just going to tie it all together here at the end by having them kind of go like, oh yeah, I sort of know that school. Yeah, I remember tabula rasa. Maybe they can't overtly remember why. It could be something just as small as like, oh yeah, I must have had a meeting there. I must have given a speech there or something. But we want to do this just to give the end of their arc we want to finish that bridge, so to speak. We want to have the bridge go over the river and not just stop halfway, where it kind of does now. We don't get any closure. So this would be a good way to do it. Just have them sort of vaguely remember tabula rasa. We don't overtly ever say maybe they were a professor, maybe they weren't. We just kind of hint at the ideas. So Teal leaves. Finally, after all this time, Teal leaves. And I'm going to use this opportunity to take a drink. Phew. Oh yeah, that's water. Love that stuff. So Teal finally leaves and she's going about her trek. We love that for her. And we mentioned that the atmosphere is growing cold, and that's wonderful. I love that inclusion. If y'all remember back when we were getting into like 27, 28, I was going on about how we need to make the atmosphere more of an active player throughout Teal's endeavor. And so that's great. It's getting colder. However, there's no inclusion of occlusion. And I hate that I wrote it that way. I hate that me writing these notes thought, oh, what a funny little text line. What a funny little line to read. Do you know how hard that was for me to say? Do you know I have a speech impediment? Dum dum. Do you know we're stupid? Do you realize how stupid we are? Do you know I had to say this on live YouTube studio content? You're lucky I didn't mess that up. Instead, I mess up saying simple things like, hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to the stream. I nailed it that time. Funny how that works. But anyways, there's no fog. There's no rain. There's no mist. There's no nothing. There's no building of atmosphere to create distance. And I think that's what I'm really hung up on. There's a point in which Teal looks over her shoulder and she just sees the Sage's Tower clear as day. It would be obscured. There is fog in the way. There is layers of hills and rolling, undulating terrain that is going to create and layer these veils of atmosphere that are going to obscure the tower. And we don't talk about any of that. We don't talk about how the hills are kind of murky in color. There's this veneer of mist and sleet that's beginning to coat the world, right? It's getting cold, or it is kind of chilly, rather. I don't know. Getting cold is chilly. Is there really a difference? It's like glass half full, glass half cold. Just something to be aware of going into draft 2. If we're gonna build the setting here, we need to include this as a point. So there's just, this is a little nickel, and I'll try to go over it quickly. We're talking about, we get to this point where Teal is feeling a little upset, and she reaches to her belt to get Lacrimosa because she feels more comfortable in this moment holding the lantern instead of just having it at her side. And it's while I was reading this that I clued in that we did a really, really, really haphazard job of mentioning that Teal tied the lantern to her belt again when she was getting changed, right? Earlier on in the chapter, she's getting ready to leave. I can't remember. That's how haphazard it is. I can't remember the line in which we say, yeah, Teal takes Lacrimosa with her, right? And that's bad, right? We just got through so much of the book until now. Also, the dream sequence, we just got through all of that to establish this very important notion that Teal is taking Lacrimosa, this moth, her companion, very seriously. We need to take more care in moments like these to reinforce the idea that Teal is taking a lot more care of the lantern and Lacrimosa by extension. She's very early on in the book, sure, she could be haphazard with it. She can just tie the lantern to her belt and not worry about it. But at this stage in the story, we need to start being very careful about how careful Teal is being with Lacrimosa. We need to signal to readers that she's not so flippant. She's growing attached to this object and its occupant, more importantly. She needs to take care to do these things. And if she takes care to do these things, we as readers understand, okay, she is being careful because she cares about Lacrimosa. And that's all good. That's all great. What the frick happened to the banjo? Hello? Knock, knock. Hello? Me? Hello? Where is it? Can you tell me? Could you point me to the banjo, please? We don't even mention how Teal grasps at the strap out of anxiety. Does she even pluck it here? I honestly don't know. I don't know if she actually plays the banjo throughout the segment. I have no idea. Which, much like the lantern earlier, is a telling sign that, yeah, we probably don't mention it very well. If I do mention it, it's just kind of a throwaway line, which isn't good. Teal's banjo needs to be an important and integral part of the story. But it isn't. And, I've been beating on this drum before. We're coming back to it because we're back in the real world. Maybe. But where's this banjo? Where's this banjo? We could just have her playing it a little bit. Maybe, maybe she sits down while she's getting changed earlier to calm herself. And even if it doesn't work, as long as we mention that she's caring about the banjo, that once again she cares about this object that she is linked to, that she's threaded to, then it becomes, or rather, it shows that it has weight in the story, that it is an integral piece of imagery, that Teal is not just hauling it around because she wants to, she's hauling it around because she's connected to it, that she feels this need to have this instrument accompany her, right? The banjos aren't light. This isn't just something airy and inconsequential that she's been hauling around. This is a weighty instrument that's been hanging off of her back the entire time. Something she has grown fond of and learned to probably not master, but learn to play, learn to appreciate. And we just, as a narrator, we don't take the time to incorporate it into the story with as much due diligence as it deserves is really disheartening. So, come on, just get the banjo in there. Even if she just plays it, even if she just thinks about playing it, that's great. As long as it's there, and we mention it's there, and that Teal is concerned about it. I have this throw a lane. Oh, geez. The mouth typos are already coming up. We've been at this for an hour, folks. We're at page 5. This might be a 3-hour episode. Hang tight. I have this throwaway line where I mention Teal is slipping once more into madness, and that's just cheating. Instead, I've said this before, we just need to exemplify. We just need to show that Teal is becoming more and more unhinged. The classic adage of show, don't tell. We can twist this into the idea, as mentioned, that Teal she feels compelled to hold the lantern in front of her rather than just let it hang at her side. The two are kind of complementary aspects, and we can reinforce one while building up the other. We can tie it into the atmosphere as well, right? We can mention how Teal feels herself slipping from reality as the world around her begins to become more and more bleak. And during this period of frictionlessness, it's Lacrimosa that Teal is hanging onto. Lacrimosa and the lantern become this pillar that Teal is desperately clinging to in order to maintain her sanity. But right now I just say, yeah, she's going a little crazy. That gal, she's going a little nuts. Frickin' lazy writing. Okay, so we do come to a point here. My notes verify this. We come to a point where I mentioned how it's too laborious for Teal to play the banjo, and I don't think that's wrong. But then why don't we talk about the banjo earlier? Why don't we mention it earlier? Why do we just bring it up in passing and say, oh, it's Teal's kind of focusing on hiking right now? The terrain's a little too uneven for her to be playing the banjo. Once again, very lazy. I like this idea. I like the idea that Teal's coming to a point where she is reluctant and has to give up on one of the things that she finds soothing. Right? Teal's becoming restless. She's becoming frazzled. And because the banjo is no longer a viable option of distraction, of calming her nerves, she has to rely solely on Lacrimosa for this calming effect that they've been providing. But we don't do that. We don't do that. We just don't talk about the banjo. And that stinks. That's really not good. It's doing stuff for fun. Hey, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. But, hey, there we go. I thought I hit that button, but I guess I missed. But with regards to the banjo, yeah, we just need to talk about it more. And a big reason it's important on a narrative side, what's that called, Watsonian, is that we can show that Teal's progression with regards to her skill with the instrument. Did that make sense? She's getting better at playing the banjo. And this exemplifies not only that she's been sticking with it, that she appreciates it, but it lends readers a sense of time. It gives them a scale. It's not a very good one, but they can see the trajectory of, okay, Teal fumbles with the banjo, Teal meets the bard and learns the basics, and from there, basically every time we talk about Teal playing, she's getting a little better. I think up until the point we get to do it in next chapter, where Teal actually sits down and she's playing a little song. Or we even talked about it in Parent and Child, chapter 26. We talked about how Teal plays a little ditty for the child, right? We get this sense that Teal is getting better at playing the instrument because she's been stuck with it for so long. And like I said, it's not a good sense of time, but it's just something that, like, if we're going to be so sloppy about mentioning the banjo, we're not going to get into this level of detail. And this is just something really subtle that readers will appreciate if we say, hey, did you notice? Teal's getting better at playing the banjo. Do you realize how long that would take, right? And we're not saying any of this, but the subtext upon subtext is so essential to what she's going through right now. This grounds readers and it gives them something to latch onto, even if it's something vague, much like Teal is holding on to Lacrimosa. Readers can hold on to Teal's progression as this airy sense of time, of proceeding through the story. From there, we really just stumble our way into this straightaway scene. And it's very clumsy, it's very sudden. I don't really like it at all. I get what we're going for. I'm trying to build this sense of disorientation with Teal, that her observations aren't lining up, that she's having a tough time staying present. But I shouldn't give up so easily on achieving a way to present Teal as passing from one area to another. I don't want to completely, right? This is such a big part of the end of this book, is that Teal's basically going insane. And I can't just drop that. I don't want to drop that, but I also need to find creative ways in which I can exemplify that she's really struggling to physically be aware of where she is. A thought I had, one way to do this would be to incorporate the shifting of Teal's thoughts and merge that into the shifting of the landscape. We can show that she's progressing because we're showing that when her thoughts change, she's taking note of her surroundings. You know, in these troughs and peaks of her thoughts, she's coming up for air and looking around and going like, okay, there's more rocks, there's less trees, there's more hills. That's fine, that's good, whatever. As long as the path's still here, I guess it's whatever. You know, she has these thoughts, the desires to play the banjo, but oh, this is what I'm saying. Right? She could be thinking, oh, I want to play the banjo. And she comes upon this straightaway where the area, the terrain has leveled off. And she starts thinking, oh, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, this is a little more level. I could play my banjo here. And then it's the next part. It's transitioning into the next part that brings her up, right? She's come up for air and she's taking these thoughts. She's using this moment to creep away from her insanity before maybe she descends back into it unknowingly. There's definitely this merging. I hope that didn't pick up. I kind of bonked my mic. Sorry. There's this merging between the atmosphere and Teal's anxiety. And it's pretty overt, right? Like I'm not saying this is a masterpiece. It's far from it. But it's important that we do this, right? I am intentionally trying to incorporate the atmosphere, the setting with Teal's inner turmoil. And that's really important. There is a fearfulness to Teal here, right? And a reason she hesitates, a reason she doesn't end up playing the banjo is because she feels like there's this mounting dread. maybe she even does. Maybe she even does start to play the banjo, but she kind of shies away from it. Maybe it's because she's starting to feel judged by something nearby. The something nearby we'll get to in just a moment. Oops, hit my mic twice. This dang thing is like, right, I gotta have it close to my face so that it picks up. It's a very, it's a good mic in the sense that it doesn't pick up sonic distractions from a good distance. But man, I gotta keep it so close, and I just gotta keep my hands here. Do y'all understand how much I fidget when I talk? Not that much, but I do gesture. It's that European, says European genes. Just kidding. I'm 100% authentically from the void. No part of my ancestry is from Europe. What can I say? I'm wiggly. I got a wiggly personality. I can't be stopped. It's how I quell the anxiety. I expel it through my gestures so that I'm not misunderstood. It's an important part of communication. So we come upon this point, and this is tied in with what we were just saying. We come upon this point that we're pretty sure Teal is hallucinating, and she might be having another, episode, another bout of insanity, so to speak. And I think we can present this in a way that's much more tasteful than just saying Teal started to see things again. Right? We're almost doing Teal a disservice, both Teal and the readers a disservice, I would say, by being so slapdash with the explanation. We fail to incorporate Teal's senses. We fail to incorporate how her senses are betraying her. And given how sparsely described this valley, this straightaway is, why are there no observations? Why does Teal stop here and feel judged and have all of these weird allusions to feeling kind of visually violated? But she doesn't lean on any of it. She doesn't explain any of it. We miss the opportunity of both building character and scene by just diving right off the deep end and going, "Oh yeah, Teal's insane, by the way. Here's what she sees." It's I don't think this is necessarily lazy writing. I think this is me just not being proficient at writing at the time, right? Like I just don't think I knew what I wanted out of this. But now that I know what I want out of this, seeing all of this feels lazy. But I think at the time it was just me being clueless. Ignorance and laziness tend to be confused. And in fact, laziness, one could argue, is doesn't exist at all and is just a construct of the Protestant branch of Christianity. But if you want more on that, I'm not the place you should look. You should go read Tumblr posts about that. Filthy Tumblr and its leftist agendas. Go read Tumblr posts, kids. Get yourself educated. Don't, by the way, I'm joking. Don't. If it wasn't apparent, don't. /J/joking. What do kids say these days? Just don't do it, all right? Don't go on Tumblr. I'm not trying to keep my website safe. Y'all can go on Tumblr. Who am I kidding? It's just a cesspool. Like, know what you're getting into. Tumblr's a piece of shit. Oops, too late. Too late. Robin's on Tumblr. Robin reblogged a post of mine from like an hour ago. I never mind. I better not talk about my Tumblr post or we'll be here all day. Yeah, we just need to incorporate Teal into the scene better and be more mindful of her growing madness. I think if we take Teal's madness a little more seriously, it will pay off dividends going forward when she is actually experiencing these harrowing scenes. Speaking of which, Teal finds some elves, right? Teal finds some elves and they're weird and judgy and a little toxic. At first, Teal gets the impression that the first elf she sees, right, because she sees one and then she sees another and then she starts seeing more and more. The congregation of elves doesn't just manifest, it sort of materializes. And Teal, near the start, gets the impression that she's being stared at. She's pretty certain that the elves don't have eyes, but we need to heighten this sense of dread, this horrific ordeal that Teal is kind of putting herself through, that she's struggling through. And I think a good way to do that is to exemplify that these elves aren't really staring with their eyes. There is not a visual perception, but there's almost a force placed upon Teal. There's a pressure weighing down on her. They're looking at her, they're staring, not with eyes, but with this callous resentment. Right? Teal can tell that these elves are following with their movements. They seem, almost to twist and turn exactly where she's placed in space. It's not the idea that they're just observing Teal, they're appraising her. We also don't get any sense of and this harkens back to what we were just talking about. We don't get any sense, full stop. We don't get any sense here. What does Teal see? What did she feel? What did she smell? Do these elves stink? Are they actually corpses? Are they rotting bodies? I don't know. Do they breathe? Do they make sound? Are they wheezing? Are these ways we could make this seem more creepy, right? If we describe them as kind of being fetid beings, of rotting flesh, would that make it a little more horrifying? Would that make it a little more scary? I don't know. But regardless, we should mention what Teal is experiencing. Because on top of Teal being judged, she feels revolted. That's an important aspect of the scene. That Teal is both weary and worn, but also grossed out, nauseous, resentful, and, like I said, revolted. She's just encapsulates this discomfort that she really, really, really doesn't want to be here, and she really, 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 really doesn't want these elves to be here. She would doing this is already bad enough. Why are there weird, judgy elves wearing old clothes? I don't like that. So I don't actually know what I'm talking about here in my notes, I'll be honest with you. This point of repetition, the twisting mantra of Teal to push onward, right? So yeah, so we do get this sense of yep, here it is, right? Teal has this, she's developing this inner phrase. She's developing this phrase that she keeps repeating mentally in order to spur herself onward. And I don't dislike this spot for it, right? She's kind of at the zenith of this judgmental aura. Here it is even again, right? This up, 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 up. This just one more step, just another. She's coaxing herself. She's coaching herself. She's ensuring herself that yep, we just got to keep going. We just got to keep going. Don't worry about it, Teal. Just keep going. It's fine. And we get to the issue that yeah, this is a good spot for it. She would be thinking these things. But I think, and this is probably maybe from the dream sequence, that the phrase has lost some of its weight. It feels a little out of place here. If we want to maintain this as a theme, which I'm pretty sure we do, we should bring it up more frequently. And almost have it become a sickening reminder to readers that Teal is becoming undone. She is falling apart. As it stands, it comes up here and there. It came up the last time, I think, just before she met the knight. And then before that, just before she met the mother. and maybe a little bit before she met the florist. It doesn't come up nearly enough, though, right? By the time we get here, we've lost it. We've lost it because the dream sequence exists in the middle, and none of this mantra is maintained through that. So when we come back here and it's like a whiplash, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that, but this is a bit much. Why are we being so heavy-handed with it? Well, because without the dream sequence, yes, this part culminates and it kind of makes a little more sense. But with the dream sequence, we've kind of had a cutoff, right? There's a trough, and then we skyrocket back to insanity mantra town, right? It's elevation 5,000 meters. It's up on a mountain, and it's too much. We need to better incorporate this idea throughout the beginning parts of part 3, maybe even like the ending bits of part 2, so that by the time we get here, this doesn't feel so much of a slap at the face. And this is, and I can't explain how important this is, because later on in the book, we untangle this mantra, we untangle the insanity, and we tie Teal back together. Right? So if we screw this up here, we screw up something that we've been trying to build up as like something we can hang our hat on by the end of the book. And if we botch that, we've botched one of the most important subtextual messages the entire 500 pages of this book have been building towards. And I say 500, I know it's like 430, I say 500 because I'm certain by the time I get to the end of the second draft, we're going to be over 500 pages. Mark my words. Fear me if you dare, we will be over 500 pages. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll cut something out. I don't know. Probably not. I shouldn't drink too much water. I shouldn't drink too much water because there's only so much water and I still have to keep talking. But it's important we do this, right? So we need to take a step back here. We need to reassess part 3 at large. We need to assess the dream sequence, and we need to reassess how we're applying this this mantra, this repetitive phrase over the course of not only this chapter, but the preceding chapters as well. So that going forward, going beyond this, it will further strengthen the idea, so that by the time we do untangle, by the time we do pull the popper on the firework at the end of the book, that we go, I get it. And now I know why we were doing that, why we were so obsessed with that, because it led to this moment. And when it leads to that moment, it'll feel like, just such a beautiful moment of, what's that called? Of catharsis. We finally get the catharsis we've been waiting for. And that's good, right? That's why we read. We read to exercise empathy and to feel catharsis. Two incredibly important things. Empathy and catharsis. If you could... Now, I'm not going to get into that, actually. We've got more book to talk about. I'm not going to derail my thoughts. Derail. My thoughts have been derailed since the day I was conceived. Since I was conceived in the void. So back to talking about the elves. Teal likens their garments to being passé, which isn't wrong, but it doesn't read well enough. We're trying to get the point across, and I can be upfront about this right now because I'm not typing a book. Right, it's difficult in the book to say, yes, they're from a different era without just saying that. Because if I just say that, it doesn't read well. It's lazy. And one could argue that lazy writing is more efficient, but, dreamy writing is more evocative. So go off. But we need to do a better job at explaining that, yes, these garments aren't reflective of what Teal is used to from her time period. We're trying to suggest that these elves are even older than Teal's generation. We could do this by describing them as maybe being from a painting, or that they're wearing elements from like a bygone era. Maybe she recognizes some of the things these elves are wearing as like mementos or keepsakes, things she's seen in display cases, things she's been told like, oh yeah, that's, so-and-so's blank from such and such year. and then figuring out like, oh, okay, wow, that's old. And then seeing people actually just wearing this stuff and going, oh, wait a minute, that's weird. Why are you cosplaying? What's going on here? Right? The old trope of a character goes back in time and sees, uh, like knights and stuff, and they're thinking, oh, wow, I must have ended up in the Ren Fair, right? Or something like that. Um, just so we can ground the readers in the sense of, hey, they're these elves aren't from here. Even Teal thinks they're weird. Why does Teal think they're weird? Well, because dot 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 these reasons. Right now, just calling them passe doesn't do enough. It doesn't hold up the idea well enough. Oh, here's a fun little bit. Here's a fun little note. I make mention that the female elves are wearing makeup, and that's false. That's actually just untrue because it would be all of the elves that are wearing makeup. If we're basing elven society on Tang Dynasty China, and earlier, right, preceding Tang Dynasty China, maybe not completely. Now that I'm thinking about this out loud, right, if they're older than Tang Dynasty, they wouldn't be as painted up. Maybe if they were more recent. Anyways, what I'm trying to get at is that Tang Dynasty China was very gender fluid. Um, Maybe not gender fluid, but gender blind. A lot of males wore makeup. A lot of women wore males' clothing because it was just rad. They were like, yeah, I want to wear that, and most people were like, okay. The Tong court was surprisingly gender neutral. It's crazy what happens when you follow a philosophy that's just kind of like, yeah, man, just do what you want. Not that they did that very well. They were, they committed atrocities, but they were Taoist atrocities. So, the regular nobility got away with being a little gender bent. Gotta love it. I mean, I don't love the atrocities, but you know, I do appreciate gender fluidity, state recognized, state sponsored gender fluidity. I'm stopping myself from making an unremarkable remark. Um, so another big aspect of this procession, right? This elven precession. Actually, I think it's procession. Anyways, not important. A big part of it is that Teal sees parts of herself, parts of her family in these decrepit elven faces. And that whole idea should be a lot more nuanced. Um, Maybe it's something that in her delirium, Teal can be certain about. Maybe it's something that she's manifesting, but it should be something that absolutely the reader is maybe second guessing. We might even, to put it one way, readers might be thinking that Teal's just projecting. Is she really seeing parts of herself, or is she just hyper fixating on similarities because she feels guilty about her kinship? Does she like is she trying to distance herself, and ergo is finding these similarities, finding these subtle parts of these elves that she sees, reflected from her own being? Um, and yeah, I don't know. That could be one way to do it, but as it stands right now, I think it's just too much, too clearly. Um, it's one of these. It's one of those aspects that it's just I've been too heavy-handed about it, and we need to pump the brakes a little bit here to give the idea more nuance, right? Some ideas you want to dangle in front of the readers, others you just want to give to them. And this is one I want to dangle in front and say, "Ooh, here's the thing. Did you ever think of this? Maybe. Did you come to the conclusion that she's seeing bits of herself in these elves because of this, this, and this? Probably not, right? I don't want to say that. I want them to come to those ideas, to think about them critically. And then on top of that, to think, oh, well, why? Why is Teal doing this? Why is she thinking this? And right now, I ain't doing that. I ain't doing squat. Um, Additionally, Draft 2 Teal, right? Draft 2 Teal with her crazy amnesia. And also, sorry, I think my nose is all stuffy all of a sudden. I'm sorry if that's picking up on mic. Draft 2 Teal, who is a big amnesiac who can't remember anything, would be seeing a lot of these similarities and remarking for the first time how they stir strange feelings in her. More acutely, how they stir these odd memories within her. Not so much that she can suddenly recall the shape and the face of her loved ones, but there would be this icky, distracting, haunting feeling that as she's trying to get past this procession, as she's trying to move forward, she keeps noticing and being drawn towards these aspects that she notes, right? All the while she's being judged and evaluated, she's picking up these pieces. She's coming to terms with like, oh yeah, that kind of reminds me of my sister. Oh, those ears, that kind of looks like dot dot dot. Oh, that nose, that reminds me of dot dot dot. But she can never put the entire picture together, right? She's just being handed puzzle pieces and being told, here you go. And she looks at them and goes, great, what do I do with this? And then before she knows it, another puzzle piece is in her other hand. She never gets the full picture, but she is getting parts of the picture, which is super frustrating and very disorienting at the same time. And as an additional layer, right? This is just me projecting forward. As an additional layer, she's going to be caught in this moment of wanting to remember her family so badly, but she's almost willing to substitute what's in front of her, right? She sees these bits of her family and she's almost like, oh, okay, well, was this it? Did those eyes match with this piece? Can I make a picture of Azure if I just take out all the pieces of these weird elves? Is she gonna do that? I don't know, probably not, but it's something one could read into. Um yeah, and this is me just saying in draft two, right? If we apply these ideas to Teal, who is really struggling in draft two, to piece together who her family was, who she is, where she sat amidst her familial congregation. This brings it down. This draws the entire scene down to a point that it doesn't exist in now, where Teal is having these thoughts of like, oh, why are these aspects of these creepy elves nostalgic for me? Why am I feeling a strange longing for these decrepit, hideous figures, right? Um, Not only is she being judged, right? That's a big thing that's present. Not only is she being judged by these creepy ancestors, but she's being crushed by her inability to remember any of her loved ones. She's desperately trying to ram these puzzle pieces together and they just don't fit. And that's so frustrating for her. And not only that, but there's a bunch of elves chanting nonsense at her for her to get lost and go home. I don't even know where home is, dum dums. Y'all tell me to get lost? I am lost. I've been lost since I got here. Step up off. Just some ideas, just some considerations to further the agenda of Draft 2 Teal. Teal kind of has a thought here that maybe she should just join the procession and disappear forever, and that's good. That's a great thing for Teal to be thinking here. But we don't balance it by something that I kind of thought was very obvious, and that idea is that Teal would never be properly accepted by the procession, and she knows this, right? She sees this mass of elvish purebloods, and she knows that she, as a half elf, would never really fit in. She would never be a pureblood elf. She would always stand out amongst this procession. like we kind of bring up her muted features that keep her separate, that keep her an other to the elves, but we don't do enough to build upon this. Teal is not an elf, and she never will be. She is, still a beautiful individual in her own right as a half elf, but elvish society will never fully accept nor love her. And frankly, neither will human society, and that's something we don't touch on very much in this book. We probably will talk about it a lot more going forward, but Teal as a half-breed is not really welcome anywhere. And that sucks. That really sucks. But it's something we should touch on now, that we should balance this idea that she wants to just maybe become one with her ancestry, but she knows that she never will because she isn't of one single descent. And maybe that's something we can mention earlier. Maybe this is something when we talk about this, we can draw on that. Well, why is she only seeing elves? If she's pretty concerned, if she's pretty certain that these are her elvish ancestors, where are her human ones? Where is the human procession? Are they just around the corner, I wonder? Do they have their own team chant? Probably not, but it's something to consider, something that maybe should be brought up. I digress, however. Let's keep moving on. So as mentioned, Teal really falls into her mania here. And I don't dislike it, but I think, right, we have this big paragraph right here on my left here. We've got this big paragraph where Teal just kind of goes off the deep end. And I don't hate that she goes off the deep end. I think she ultimately needs to. But I think just having it as a wall of text, a wall of insanity, is not nice to read. It's ungraceful. I think it would be a lot better if we broke this up as an idea, broke up these little touches and tossed them throughout the text. It's it's like walking along and just seeing like a really loud advertisement, like you're walking along in your suburban neighborhood and suddenly there's a big billboard right in front of you, and it just, it's got ear sirens, ring, ring, and it just screams at you, and you just walk around and like, oh, whoa, okay. All right, well, I'll just keep going about my day. Maybe you remember the advertisement later, maybe you don't. Maybe you just remember how awful it was, but it sure was in your way, wasn't it? The second point is me saying, like, I don't actually hate that there's just a wall of insanity, but if we're going to have a wall of insanity, we should at least build up to it. We should incorporate this insanity as Teal makes her way through this procession and then come upon it, almost as if we're walking up a ramp to get to this peak of insanity. We can incorporate these little things as Teal's going through this procession, as she's making her notes about these elvish ancestors, until we get to this crux, until we get to the release valve here of, oh, I guess I'm going to lose it. I guess I'm going to fall off my rocker here. And in doing this, we can really sink into the mania. We can use this time to really twist the narrative and Teal's frazzled mind together. We can bind these ideas that, like, okay, yeah, maybe the narrative is just losing the plot too. How much can we trust from a plot about a girl who is absolutely losing her mind? I don't know. Maybe you can't. Maybe you should just put the book down now, but you're 34 chapters in and you might as well just keep going. You haven't gotten to the ending, have you? So, just something fun we can play with. Like I said, we can either break this up and sprinkle it about, or we can build up to this. I think those are kind of our two options here. This last note here, this last pink note, is me just saying this would be the perfect spot to transition Teal from her regular thinking thought to this, her thinking font, to the font I intend to use for her insanity, for like the general madness of the world. And I'm not sure if that would be the same font as the one we maybe used for the nightmare in the previous chapter, the previous chapters, mind you, or a font we're intending to use going forward. But this would be a great spot to do it. If we're going to have some weird visual effects with the font changing, the fonts representing different things, this would be a great beat to have that done. We also lose Teal's exhaustion through here. This is just a very small thing. We've lost her exhaustion. We've lost her lethargy. We should be bringing that back. That should be an aspect of Teal's being. It's not just disappeared. She doesn't just go insane and forget that she's tired. Her insanity is born from her exhaustion. She's not just begging herself to take another step. She's getting her away. She's trying to get herself away from these hallucinations, and she's willing herself. She's drawing deep into herself that despite all of her pain, despite how tired she is, despite how exhausted she is, she needs to keep going. These, like we said earlier, this isn't just Teal talking to herself. This isn't just her thoughts. This is her mantra. This is a deep ideological phrase that she is using to spur herself onward, because if she doesn't, she's going to get stuck here and she's going to get eaten by the elf zombies. And ain't no one want that. Ain't no one want to get eaten by elf zombies. Trust me. Happened to me once. It was awful. What do we got here? Aerith thought Teal ought to be of the mind that the sound of the bell is dragging her over each hill. Okay, yeah, that's a fun little idea. This can be something we can tie into the insanity. That, yeah, maybe Teal is just hearing phantom bell. Maybe with like each step she hears another clamoring clang of the bell, urging her, drawing her to keep moving forward. And we can even bring this up earlier, that she's languishing, that each time she ends up in a valley between hills, she hears the bell, she hears like a phantom gong drawing her forward, pulling her up to the next peak before she looks out and she sees, okay, well, I'm not at the bell tower yet. I guess I got to keep going. Just something cool we can incorporate throughout the latter half of this chapter. Blah, 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 more stuff about me being sloppy, about the madness. We finally get to the chanting, right? There's this poem here that these elves are chanting, and I like it, but we got to fix a few things. And like, not necessarily with the poem itself, more with how it's presented. It should first and foremost be more of a song rather than a poem. We need to suggest that the voices are supporting one another in a choir. We almost want to build this idea of this sickening choral concert, that these elves are not just cheering as they would be at like a sporting event or something. They are an organized, practiced league in unison, chanting this haunting, threatening. It's a very threatening ode. And right now we kind of just fall off, right? Like, the song's cool, the way it's presented is fine, but we could do some more to really build this up. My suggestion here is to imagine an operatic voice soaring above a choir of harmonious chanting. There should be this vicious power, this hatred, this disgust that these voices have for Teal. They're not just singing. They want her to leave. They are fed up with her. They don't just want her to leave. They want her to stop existing. Right? And that's not good, right? And we don't get that sentiment from this. We get it physically. We get it from the words, but from the way the scene is set up, we don't get that viscous, nasty hatred. On a more logical note, these words aren't in Elvish. What the hoo-ha? What the hey? It's almost like I couldn't translate a whole poem into Mandarin Chinese. How did that happen? I I think it'll just be stronger in a literary sense if we put it in quote unquote Elvish. If we actually, because it is already a style of Chinese poetry. I've just put in English words for the sake of my convenience, but as a work of poetry, as a work of Elvish chanting. Oh, you can't see. I'm making air quotes. Quote unquote Elvish chanting. This should just be in Chinese. The style I'm already doing here is this form of poetry I'm suggesting. Li Bai, that's the guy's. I was stuck on Liu Bai. I was trying to remember this poet's name the other day on like a Zelda stream, and I completely dropped the ball. Li Bai, that's the famous Tang era poet. He sang about drinking with the moon at like midnight and being crestfallen and forlorn because, you're drinking with the moon and not your loved one. Or loved ones, rather. Yeah, so I like mention this and then I correct myself because I'm already doing it in that form, and then just do it in Mandarin. Okay, got it. We just got to rewrite the poem. Great, thanks. Also, where's the heartbeats? Where are the heartbeats? We forgot the heartbeats. Please put those back in. Thank you. Okay. Teal's reaction. What reaction? She really doesn't have a reaction. That sucks. Um, and that's because I phrase it that Teal's too muddled. She's too confused to express a reaction appropriately. But I just don't think that's right. Right? It's not that she can't express herself. I think it's just that there's too much going on. There is a torrent of emotions going through her right now, and all of them are valid. Um, we just don't talk about how she wants to go about proceeding, how she wants to act. She wants to destroy, right? She wants to rend. She wants to get rid of her madness. She wants to project herself almost into a nothingness. She wants this all to end. She's fed up with it, right? Um, we even have this bit, right? Because she's essentially she has this moment where she's like, man, I just want to get rid of everything. I want to get rid of everything. I'm going to use my magic to just like destroy this entire stupid valley. I hate this place. And that's not really the sentiment we're trying to go for. It touches on it that she wants to destroy, but we don't, Teal doesn't actually want to break apart this entire environment. She just wants this experience to stop. She wants to stop having a bad time. Um, Teal's already gotten to this point where she's trying to run from her mania. And she ends up being fed up with it, right? She knows she can't run. She knows she can't really destroy everything. She's hitting this wall. And that's why right now she just grabs her hat, she pulls down her hat and she runs. That's where we kind of lead to, right? That's the climax of the scene. She realizes she's pretty helpless. She can't actually destroy all of these things, so she just goes, okay, well, I'll run. But I think a big part of that is she's also tired of running. She's fed up with her present situation. So I think a way we can adjust the scene, and this is a big note, so like hold on to your butt. Um, I think instead of running, Teal should just react with fury, right? Once she hears this chanting, there's just going to be something that snaps in her. Teal's been trying really hard to keep herself together, like really freaking hard. And I think if by this point it isn't apparent, then I've come to a huge shortcoming as an author. I've really failed readers if they can't understand by now. Teal's really just trying to keep it all together. Um, right. So the chanting finally comes to a close, and Teal's reaction instead of running should just be anger and frustration. following this desperate attempt to keep herself together, she just can't do it anymore. And she turns to these elves and she screams and she insults them and she scolds them and she, probably even cusses at them a little, which, given Teal throughout the entire story has refrained from vulgar language, having her swear at these elves would only reinforce just how unbridled she is, just how manic she is in this moment. Um, and a lot of it probably doesn't make very much sense, but we need to have this moment of this bursting emotion, something we've yet to see from Teal throughout the story. And by doing this, we'll allow readers a glimpse into how Teal is really thinking. She's no longer subduing herself. The mask that she's been maintaining throughout this entire journey, it has slipped off. It's broken to pieces. It's not there anymore, right? She's going to express how indignant she feels, how unfair her birth as a half-elf was. And how worse yet, she despises how her gender, how the elves treat her. And at the end of it all, she just wants to go home. She hates all of this and she's saying all of this, but she just wants to go home. She knows that home encompasses all of these things that she's mad at, but she wants some level of comfort rather than having no memories and nothing and no one. We can have this really powerful scene, right? We can have this really powerful scene where we finally see Teal, who, like, a real part of Teal, a real, like, tucked away part of her that's just unleashed, and we should revel in it. We should just love this moment for what it is. It's not a good moment. It will probably be uncomfortable to read, but I think it needs to exist, right? We as readers need to see how Teal feels on a deeper level. Because as it stands right now, sure, she runs away, she's frustrated, that's fine. But there's so much more to it. There's so much more depth and disparity to it than I have included here in draft one. So in this new light, we're twisting the reason why Teal runs, right? I don't think it's a bad idea that she runs, but I think instead it's not out of fear, it's out of frustration. She doesn't have a direction, right? She lashes out, she screams, she hollers, she cusses, she swears, she kicks, she insults. She probably is on the verge of crying. And she just realizes this is pointless, this is hopeless. And with no other options, with this chanting still on the air, she doesn't have any other choice. The only other thing she can do is run away from the situation once again. Sorry, these last notes are just like further ideas. I'm wondering if maybe we could reveal something about Teal here, a reveal about Teal, regarding her ability as a magical practitioner. I think a big part of this scene might be that she's been brandishing her wand, right? Teal is in this violent rage. Yeah, of course she's going to reach down to her belt where there is a weapon, a magical weapon, no doubt, and start flinging it around, right? She's probably gonna, a big part of her tirade is going to be threatening these elves and telling them to get lost and to just leave her alone. And I think we can do a little bit of that to express that she is capable of magic. And we can maybe even just do something like that when she turns to leave, there's this patch, there's this patch of ice, or maybe there was like, a little snowstorm encapsulating Teal as she raged and fumed. Because we've been talking about, okay, it's been misty. Okay, it's been sleet. It's getting colder. But we should make it evident that should we do this, it was not an organically created frost, right? And I think that might be the best way to exemplify it. Like, okay, yeah, the path is icy, the puddles of water nearby are frozen solid. The grass nearby is dead and solid and, encased in ice. Um, and like around where Teal was standing, there's evidence of snow buildup, right? In such a short amount of time. Just so we can hint a little bit like, yep, Teal does magic. Teal has magic. Maybe sometimes she's just not the best at controlling it. Just a little cherry on top of like, I want to change this scene. I want to make it more impactful. I think we should do it by making Teal angry, because Teal hasn't expressed real deep, like bottom of the heart anger throughout the entire book. And I think she should. I think this should be her opportunity to get mad. And just the cherry on top is like, oh, we could toss some magic in there. I think we could show that, yeah, Teal actually she can do magic. Sometimes she just doesn't mean to. So she's running. Tip, 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 tip. Teal's running. We've got 5 more pages left. We're at 2 hours. We're definitely probably going to the 3-hour mark here, folks. Bear with me. In fact, you should all be thanking me and really, come on. I'm playing myself here. Get out of here. Thankfully no one actually watches these videos, so they didn't just see my guffaw. But yeah, we've got about 5 pages left. We'll get through it. We'll get through it at our own pace. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, random citizen. No, this is page 13. Hold on, I need page 12. There we are. Got a little lost in my notes there, folks. Sorry. So Teal's running. She's coming to the end of the path, and she really just trips, right? She really just trips. She's running. She trips because the path ends. It curves very suddenly. And I think we owe it to readers to describe the bend and give a reason for her tripping. Because as it stands right now, she has this outburst. She has all of these emotions. And especially if we're going to change it, having her just run away and trip is too silly. It's almost a weird comedic note, which I don't hate that it exists that way, but it takes so much away from what we were just building up. There's a cute little mention here of end of the line, which is a really good, clever play on words, but it also alludes to the end of this procession. And unfortunately, I think this procession, I think the procession, this parade of elves having an end takes away too much mystique from them. There should be this aura of endlessness to this line of elves. We also get weirdly detached from Teal here. We have this point in which we're almost viewing her from like a third person wide angle lens. Like she's kind of in the distance. And I really couldn't put my finger on why I feel that way, why I think that I think it's mostly just these 2 paragraphs here at the start of page 222. I couldn't say for certain. I can't point to one singular thing. But this whole thing about her turning and tripping and wiping out feels too distant, and it shouldn't feel so clunky. It's almost like we're taken aside and being told like, hey reader, by the way, Teal tripped. Instead of actually, we've been with Teal this whole time. Why are we having this little segment where it's like, oh, by the way, reader, Teal tripped. Hi, I'm the narrator. Did you miss me? No more of that half elf. We'll get back to her in a second. She tripped. She's busy right now. We should be we should be with her senses as she's experiencing all of this. We should be told and almost kind of experience the pain in tandem with her as she trips and she falls and she tumbles. Not only is it a missed opportunity, it's also just dumb. It's also just ruins the pacing, ruins the narrative. We do kind of talk about her pain a little bit after the fact, but it should be magnified. We these are mostly notes for myself, right? This little part here. Do y'all remember how hard she hit the ground earlier? Do you remember how like beat up she was after the knight picked her up? She's probably still recovering from that. Do you remember how torn up she was while she was talking to the sage? How like tired she was? But she just bounces back from like going from a full on sprint and wiping out. She just bounces back. She's like, "Yeah, all right, I'm okay. I'm fine. I got to get back up." Let's be a little more realistic here. She has absolutely not recovered from those incidents. Not a bit, not an iota. She doesn't yell, she doesn't gasp, she doesn't cry out in pain. She doesn't wince, right? If you're thinking that she already fell earlier, her ribs would already be tender. She's probably got bruises all over her torso from hitting the ground like a bucket of nails. And you're telling me she just wipes out like this in the middle of a backcountry hill, right? Like this is a rugged environment. She definitely hit some rocks or something. The mud, the dirt, even if there aren't rocks in there, falling and skidding like this hurts. I don't know if y'all have ever done it. I've done it. It sucks. It hurts like hail. Um, why is she not smeared with dirt? Why is she not cut up? Why is her cloak not uh, uh, exemplifying the effects of what she just dealt with? It doesn't make any sense. It's not good continuity. Um, this should just hurt. This entire scene should just hurt, and it doesn't right now, and that's kind of stupid. We want to do this to exemplify, yes, she is hurt right now, what she just did hurt, but also, hey, do you remember how she's really been going through it? Do you remember, reader, how she's taken some tumbles and some spills recently? Because I do, and she does. Her body sure does. So let's keep that in there. Let's remind readers and remind Teal and remind ourselves that hey, Teal is a physical being that feels pain and does not immediately heal herself. She did not take a short rest. She did not take a long rest. We were very, very clearly, very potently, very pointedly clear earlier that she did not have a good sleep. She did not get the needed 6 to 8 hours of rest to enjoy the benefits of a long rest. Uh-uh. No way. And she's out of hit dice. She ain't getting any HP back. Unless she sips a potion. Sorry, honey. Your spell slots are gone. Also, like, yeah, just a little bit. Why isn't she reaching for Lacrimosa? This would be a great spot to exemplify. I should keep using that word. This would be a great spot to show that Teal still really cares about Lacrimosa. That even when she's writhing in pain, even when she's smeared on the ground, her first thought is, what about the bug? What about the frail little bug that I feel responsible for? We can show her reaching for the lantern, maybe pathetically, as the pilgrim rolls up. Um, but just something to add, just something we could add that would, you know, season this scene with a another layer. Um, so Teal in this scene reacts negatively to being touched. We've been talking about this off and on throughout the Draft Diary series that Draft 2 Teal is probably going to have to exhibit that trait a little more pointedly, a little more overtly. And so she's touched here and she gets really snarly. But we mentioned that the pilgrim jostles her, right? We mentioned that okay, here's the order of events. The pilgrim runs over. Teal's kind of being pathetic, and but her senses are coming too. The pilgrim kind of assesses her, and in that moment, right, when they're trying to get her attention, they give her a shake. They're like, "Hey, are you all right?" They jostle her, shake, shake, shake. Are you awake? Um, and then afterwards, they offer her their hand to help her stand up. And it's in this moment that Teal is at her prickliest. It's in this moment of, hey, do you want a hand up? Do you want help? That Teal becomes defensive and rebarbative. Rebarbative? Whatever. Like that guy, like Kirk, the Knight of Thorns. She becomes prickly. Um, and it just doesn't make sense, right? If she didn't react to being jostled, even if she was kind of in like a mindless state, wouldn't she react to that instead? Wouldn't she be more upfront, right? Even if she's in this half-baked state, she should be reluctant. She should almost like push the pilgrim away, like, don't touch me, you know? And given her state, given about how she was just raging and ranting, she might even react pretty violently. Um, even if that action would hurt her more, because she's probably bruised her ribs from this fall or something, she would. She's not in the mental state to be so considerate of her physical well-being. She's not thinking rationally. Um, and people when they hurt themselves, their first instinct isn't I want help. Usually their first instinct is, I don't know, maybe this is just like me. Maybe this is just a me thing. This is something I feel like I've noticed in others, though, is that when people hurt themselves, they often withdraw. Their first instinct is, I want to assess what's wrong with me, not, please help me. Right? So when a stranger, a total stranger, when you are a touch averse being, runs up to you, shakes you, and says, are you all right? Teal's first reaction isn't going to be, oh, thank you, my savior. Thank you. You did it. You saved me. Poor helpless little half elf. You did it. Now I'm all better. You fixed me. No, her first reaction is going to be, don't touch me, you fucking loser. All right? Piss off. I'm really going through it. I'm having a really bad time right now, and I don't need you making it worse. Okay? I just want to be left alone with my little bug, and I just want to breathe for a little bit, and I just want to have a little sit on the mud here. And like, as a completely unrelated aspect, she's probably embarrassed. She probably doesn't like the fact that she knows in this moment, oh, somebody just saw me wipe out. Somebody just saw me eat shit on the side of the road, is not helping her case. She is not going to react pleasantly to the pilgrim. So we need to adjust all of this. The way, like, the beats of this introduction are fine. I don't think there's a problem with the pilgrim running over and trying to help Teal, but it's her reaction. It's Teal's participation in this scene that defines her. And thus, going forward, as we change the preceding scene, we need to redefine Teal here, going forward. Whether she swats away the pilgrim, whether she pulls out her dagger, whether she just stares daggers. She might even say something. She might still be in the headspace of just like, I am violent and redolent, and I just hate everything right now. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to anyone. It could be anything. We can dress up the scene a lot better going forward. The follow-up, right? The proceeding beats after the pilgrim approaches her, it should just be omitted, right? Especially the inclusion of Teal hating being touched. We should already know in draft 2, we should already be very well aware that Teal doesn't like being touched. This should be something, once again, that is never outright spoken, but we've had enough hints, we've had enough clues, we've been told through the narrative that Teal really doesn't like being touched by other people. Spelling it out like I do right now is just going to be a slap in the face. Readers, all readers, not just, like smart or intuitive readers, everyone should be going through this book and get to this point and just be like, oh yeah, buddy, you shouldn't have touched Teal. Don't you know she hates being touched? She hates being touched, and she's having a really bad time right now. But obviously the pilgrim doesn't know. The pilgrim hasn't read the book. They're a character. But still, the readers should be thinking that. Um, we should instead reveal that Teal has to get herself up. Teal's got to push herself up. And it should be kind of a sorted affair. We should really be pushing how stubborn she is, how pig-headed she is, how she's pushing herself despite the pain. Um, and this is also a good bit on the reverse side. We're showing that the pilgrim is understanding. They're pretty patient. They have a very mild reaction to Teal's over-the-top rejection. And by having them wait around, by having them not just depart or give up on Teal, we're revealing that we're revealing multitudes about the pilgrim that otherwise go unmentioned. They have this naturally kind being. They want to make sure Teal's okay. They don't just see her get up and they're like, okay, you're all good, bye. They're sticking around afterwards to talk to her to make sure she didn't get a concussion or something. So by doing this, by making all these tweaks, I think it benefits both characters throughout this scene. And what more could I want? What more could I want rather than, aside from having both characters be represented in a more subtle and rewarding fashion? There's not a lot I want more than that, except maybe like $1 million and world peace. And I could go for a really good brownie. That'd be great. And like a nice dark coffee. Yum. Maybe even just like a macchiato. Oh yeah. And like a raspberry compote. Yum. I'm drooling over here. Let's get back on topic before I make myself hungry. So yeah, we have another instance of Teal gets to her feet, right? The two start talking. And we have another instance here of Teal she's not hurt. She was clearly just in pain, but now she doesn't. Now she doesn't. She's not in pain anymore. How'd that happen? And we can say that she's really just putting on a brave face. That's fine, but we should be able to point to little things. We should be able to point to aspects of her and point out like, oh yeah, no, Teal's hurt. She can be thinking, my elbow's sore. My knees hurt. Oh, my side really hurts. I don't think I can actually just lean over like I used to. I think I might have hurt something. I might have pulled something. We could mention how it stings when she stands up, just to have little notions that yes, she is still hurt. Yes, she did just take a tumble. She is able to get on her feet. None of her bones are broken, but she is in pain. Just something to be aware of. Teal has this moment of being panicked about Lacrimosa, and it's pretty resigned right now. It should be way more forthright, way more overt that Teal is worried that her tumble damaged the lantern. We can maybe even just write it. We can just rewrite it so that the pilgrim finds Teal clutching at the lantern. She's just on her side, writhing in pain, just holding this lantern in, in fright, in a state of shock. Maybe even she's like in the midst of a panic attack or something, She probably is, let's be real. And this can be where the pilgrim finds her. She's overwhelmed with this emotion that, at one point, at one high, seeing, like, worrying that, I fell and I might have hurt Lacrimosa. And then at the other high, right, coming to the realization like, the relief that no, Lacrimosa's fine. The lamp's a little beat up, but yeah, no, the moth is okay. Thank goodness. We also, right, need to mention that her banjo's there and that the banjo's fine and everything's okay, and she should probably take a moment and assess it. Much like she is relieved that Lacrimosa is okay, she should be thrilled that the banjo was broken. She does kind of expect it right now. She's kind of like, okay, the banjo's all right, but she doesn't play it. She doesn't pluck strings, and that's such a core component of the banjo that were something to happen to the strings, she would be very concerned. So just as like a very minor thing, she should pluck the strings here and just make sure the banjo sounds okay. Um, with regards to the pilgrim, 3 more pages, folks. 3 more pages. Let's bring it home. With regards to the pilgrim, they should just be a little more awkward. Um, it should be as if they're talking too quickly or maybe stumbling over the words, kind of like I do, kind of like I talk, because I'm dumb. I'm not projecting here. I'm definitely not projecting. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. I'm not projecting. I said stop. Stop looking. Just keep listening. It's a podcast. Remember, this is a podcast now. But yeah, the pilgrim should just be a little more awkward. Just I think it reads better as their like character trait. Um, we have a lot of Teal expressing herself and not using her ears. Not. I guess she's using them, but we're not talking about it. The narrative makes no mention of her ears throughout this sequence, where Teal is very emotive, and that's unfortunate. Much like the rest of the book, where we're not mentioning Teal's ears with regard to her emotion, we fall into the same shortcoming here as well. And so that needs to be fixed. The pilgrim gives Teal some directions, but they're kind of jumbled. The way the directions are presented is clumsy. Um, but the directions themselves should remain, right? So essentially what they're doing is they're telling Teal how to get to the bell tower. And what I'm saying here is that the beats they mention should remain, but the way in which the pilgrim tells Teal is what's clouded. None of it reads very well. But to reiterate, from Teal's current point, it should be go through the mountains, get to the valley, find the lock, get to a clearing, there's the tower, right? Those are the 5 main beats. And the pilgrim just summarizes it weirdly. They I don't know. They give it in a weird order. Um, Throughout this conversation, Teal's a little tart. Teal's a little tart, and that kind of makes sense given what just happened to her. But uh, her state here shouldn't be one of sourness. It should be one of exhaustion. She gets to her feet. She's in pain. She's in no condition to be participating in a colloquy. But here she is, right? Unfortunately, required to do this, to go through the whole rigmarole, because she needs this information. She's found somebody who's actually been to the bell tower, and she knows, okay, I have to interrogate this loser, even though I really don't want to, even though I just want to leave, even though I want to go have a big sit and maybe a little cry. Um, so she shouldn't be appearing tart. She shouldn't be sour. She's just kind of fed up and aloof and exasperated. She should dial back the harshness, um, and ratchet up the teenage angst, the like, I just don't want to be here right now. The service worker who's had a long shift and just wants to go home. That should really be how Teal is feeling right now. She's not being snotty. She shouldn't be sour and aggressive. She just is fed up, and we need to exemplify that better. Um, so this like there's this beat here where the pilgrim blocks Teal. Essentially, they give her directions, and then Teal's like, "Okay, I'm out. Bye. Thank you for the directions. I'm leaving." And the pilgrim steps in. They step in to block Teal, and this should be a very brief moment of boldness for them. And I think this will read a lot better if we make them a little more meek in their introduction, make them awkward, like we were talking about. This will further reinforce that concept, that unsaid concept, that the pilgrim has this gentle side to them, this kindness, this maybe not heroic side, but um, this desire to do good. And this is an aspect of it, of like, oh, I can't let you leave because I have to warn you. I have to warn you about the dangers. And that's kind of where they go next. They start talking about the dangers regarding the tower and the lock and the mountains and whatnot. Um, so Teal in this segment kind of cements within herself this idea that I have to go to the bell tower. And this should just be something that she sort of cements within herself, but it should almost be a notion that falls out of her instead. Um, she's not certain of it, but something is compelling her to proceed. This is just a little fix, but it changes the flavor of her um, drive. She's not self-fulfilling. She's not reaching into herself and mustering up the courage of like, no, I have to go. This is a confused state. Something is drawing her to the bell tower. And perhaps it's the culmination of a lot of different aspects. But we need to just exemplify this. That Teal is maybe not so certain, maybe not so convinced on a deep level that she needs to do this. It's kind of just an outward like, this is my only option right now. Something that I can't explain is drawing me, and we got to keep going. Not only does Teal have to keep going, we got to keep going. We're almost done these notes. Um, so we don't touch on the point that Teal and the Pilgrim share kind of this bond. This is the only person she's met and will meet. Well, I guess kind of. Yeah, I guess so. That's actually been to the bell tower and has come away from it. Um, the only individual who expresses a longing for the bell tower. And they don't really talk about it. They don't really mention it. Neither of them dives into this point, and I don't know, it's kind of a wasted potential. Teal obviously isn't in the best mood and she doesn't have a lot of energy, but this idea should at least pierce her. She maybe doesn't react in the way she wants to or the way readers want to, but she should still internally be stirred by the idea that, oh yeah, this is a person who understands what I feel. When I'm talking about a strange something drawing me towards the bell tower, a longing for a reason to keep going, this person, the pilgrim, gets it. They are probably the only person who will ever get it. And none of that is mentioned here. None of that is talked about. We don't even like hint at it in subtext. It's just a moot point. But it's something that should be in here because this is such an integral part of their meeting. These are like the only two people who have a strange red thread of fate connecting them, and that is, the bell tower kind of did something crazy to me. Just in the Pilgrim's case, they're a little more meek about it, and they never really take that final step to get to the bell tower, whereas Teal is doggedly pursuing it from the get-go. So we can just maybe have Teal mention something solemn like, it's as though she hears it despite the silence. The bell kind of beckons towards her, and the pilgrim can kind of play off of that a little bit. They can reflect that same sentiment. We want to present them as a being who is similarly to Teal, haunted by the bell tower. They just don't have the resolve, the gumption to follow through with conquering it. They slip a little bit into conversation, which is fine, which is good. We get to a part where we're discussing the pilgrim's joie de vivre. And pardon my English accent on that. I wasn't going full French. I was only going half French. So we get to a conversational bit, and it's overall pretty good. We should just express Teal's lethargy through it here a little better. A little better, a little more fluidly. What she says is ultimately fine, just kind of like how she acts is off. we should be pushing this note that she's really just saying things like she's trying to skip through the dialogue. She's trying to press A through the dialogue because she just wants to get to the next scene. She wants to play the game again. But the pilgrim's standing here with this great big flood of text, and she's just like, okay, okay, all right, okay, A. Can I press B to speed this up? No, I can't. Is there a skip button? Darn, there isn't. This is lore text. I can't skip this part. Um, but unfortunately, like that's what we should be trying to present, but we don't, and that's unfortunate. Um, and there's this idea that maybe Teal's conniving. Maybe she's trying to trick the pilgrim into like stopping talking. Maybe she's like trying to figure out a way to get them to shut up. And if that's what she's going for, we should mention it. But right now, it kind of just comes off like she's being a jerk. Um, yeah, there's this weird manipulative point, and I kind of come upon the idea that we should just drop it. That Teal should just be tired throughout all of this, but she never loses that part of her that wants to be nice. Teal never loses the entirety of her being that wants to do the right thing. Because when the pilgrim throughout here is expressing this uncertainty, they express a doubt of like their philosophy, right? For lack of a better word. Um, and when they do, it like Teal should reach out. Teal should genuinely try to be supportive because that's how she is. That's who she is. But right now, it's mired by this weird manipulative point. I wish I could remember what the manipulative point actually was, but whatever it is should be omitted. Teal should just be like reluctantly nice here, right? She's reluctant because she's tired, not because she's spiteful. Um, so it's after this, it's after the directions and the conversation that the pilgrim kind of reveals the dangers, right? They kind of reveal, there's scary stuff over there. Um, and that's all well and good. Um, but they should present these right. There's like because the pilgrim and Teal are still conversing. They've entered this conversational zone. The pilgrim's information here should be presented in a more conversational tone, as if they have a back and forth. Right now, it's kind of just like the pilgrim's info dumping, and that's not conversational. That it breaks the flow, it breaks the verisimilitude of the scene, and that's just kind of like sad and paltry and indicative of my lack of skill as a writer. And so I should fix that so that draft two and onwards read better. Um, so it's after this that the pilgrim starts to reveal these dangers. Um, they talk about this fog, right? There's this fog, there's a beast, there's the tower, there's the lock, yada yada. But the pilgrim mentions this fog, and right now they kind of just describe it, but there should almost be this layer of disgust, one of revilement, one of loathing to this fog, kind of an aversion, a mistrust maybe. Um, and this is just kind of a side point that they never mentioned that the fog is eternal. Part of why this fog is supposed to be creepy, why it's supposed to be bad and foreboding, is that it's always there. This fog is just always in the valley after the mountains. Um, it's swirling, it's dense, it's an ever-present obscurant that shouldn't be taken lightly. And the fact that the pilgrim never mentions that is just a shortcoming. They transition into talking about a beast that lives within the fog. And this, they give a recollection. They give a little anecdote about what happened to them. And this anecdote should be more harrowing. The experience that the pilgrim goes through is pretty dramatic. It's definitely a harrowing event. but they talk about it as if it was just kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. That happened. Anyway, moving on. And that's not how people work. That's not how people generally talk about things that disturbed them. Um, it should be almost as if they're willing themselves to relive the scene, right? Like they're dealing with a trauma. They're kind of going through a flashback. We can maybe even see them start to sweat, start to look fearful as they recount this tale. Maybe they start stuttering, just so we can really push the envelope and let readers know, yep, this was a creepy bad thing that happened to the pilgrim, and they really don't like it. And they're warning Teal. They're expressing a desire to get Teal to change her mind, to really just reconsider what she's doing. Um, but also on that same note, right after saying all of that, I don't know if I'm totally convinced about such a grim detail. I don't know if I love that this happened to the pilgrim. Um, it paints the individual who committed the act as being really insidious, as being totally malicious, just kind of almost being bloodthirsty, which isn't really what we're going for. Um, I think we can still kind of have a disappearance, but and this ties back to what we were saying. I think it needs more detail overall. I think the pilgrim's anecdote here needs to fill in the gaps a little better. And by doing this, we can add more details that further support why this event happened or clarify how it happened. As it stands right now, it kind of just sounds like this, because what did happen, right? What the pilgrim's talking about is they went to the bell tower. They originally, the first time they went, they were with another person. And when they went, they met this beast, and the beast basically disposed of the other individual, right? They just got rid of them. And as it stands right now, the way the pilgrim describes it is they just murdered them. They just absolutely kill them there and then. And the pilgrim just, and, goes about their life. But that's not the idea we want. What we're trying to paint here is something more mysterious, something more like a disappearance, something more like a cosmic event that has no real explanation. We want to suggest that what doomed the pilgrim's partner was being coerced to leave the path, right? The pilgrim here is talking about don't leave the path, don't leave the path. The beast will try to get you to leave the path. And it's not that this beast killed this other person, it's just that they convinced them to leave the path. And once they left the path, it was just that it was all over from there. So we just need to adjust this story that they tell and give it more details to reinforce that idea. And just as another little side note, the pilgrim here refers to the beast as them, and I need to dial that back and correct it to be it. This is a theme we build up throughout the rest of the book after we meet the beast, because hey, surprise everyone, we meet the beast in the next episode. If you can buy into that, the place that Teal's headed that has a beast in it, we're gonna meet the beast. And the pilgrim refers to them as them, and they are a they, but initially they need to be perceived as an it. And this is so that we can go from seeing them as a beast, as a creature, as maybe an object, to personifying them and injecting them with humanity, a believability, a life, right? We're no longer considering them lesser. They are an equal, even if they maybe don't make that much sense, right? And this is just like a really such a small little thing, but it's necessary. It's a necessary trajectory because as it stands right now in the English language, it has the connotation of objectification, and they is much more warm. They embodies a livelihood, right? A pillow, a cushion will never be a they. A desk will never be a they. A door will never be a they. A plant, well, they might be. A weird, strange, otherworldly beast? Well, it's an alien, but maybe they're not so bad. You see what I'm doing here? Is this working? Is anyone picking up what I'm saying? Whatever. We're almost done here, right? This is just something we need to do now because it's a transitionary thing. And if we're just starting out with they, I can't transition to they. So we have to start with it and transition to they. Yada, yada, yada. Last point, last big step full of points here, and then we can head on our way. It's nearly freaking 6 o'clock, and my voice is going. My throat's sore, folks. Let's wrap this up. Somebody get the Looney Tunes outro card ready. So the two, right, the Pilgrim warns Teal. Teal takes it to heart. And the two end up departing. And they leave on pretty good terms. After they've been talking, after they, the Pilgrim expresses kindness towards Teal, they leave on a pretty good note. And the goodbye that they express here is really sweet. We do unfortunately skip over some really important aspects. First and foremost, Teal's in pain. Secondly, Teal's tired. Third, Teal's just got told that there's a bunch of danger awaiting her in the future. She's not going to be so chipper. She's not going to be so bright. She is going to still be like full of appreciative good nature towards the Pilgrim after what they've expressed, of what they've done for her, right? Like, even if Teal doesn't like being touched, even if they were totally put off, they understand that the Pilgrim was probably doing what they were doing out of kindness, out of altruism. But we never mention any of this. We don't mention that Teal's in pain. We don't say that she's tired. We don't express that she's tired. All of these things need to be incorporated into her actions in this final bit. The Pilgrim, on the other side, is super optimistic, right? They need to be projecting this optimism, this happiness, this jubilation that, like, yeah, you're going to go do it. You're going to go do it, stranger, and I believe in you. Whereas Teal is embodying this complete 180 of just the sour, I was about to say denigration, but that's not right. She's just kind of depressed, right? That, like, okay, yeah, I have to press on. Despite how festering this doubt within me is, I have to keep going. And just so we can juxtapose the two. That Teal is like, I have to do it. And the Pilgrim's like, no, you can do it. It's fine. You'll do great. However, we culminate this in the pair saying goodbye. And ultimately, when Teal says goodbye for now, we want that to have so many layers to this. We want it to have so much nuance that she is very subtly still a little hopeful that, yeah, we'll meet again. This is just goodbye for now. She is still reluctant. She is still leaving. And she has to push past all of this worry and pain just to meet the minimum of social obligation. But in doing so, in that small little speck of hope, she is saying not only to the Pilgrim, but to herself, yeah, we'll meet again. I'll do this, and then I'll see you again. Yeah, hey, well, I already said the last point there. I said the last point. Yeah, she's clinging to hope. Not only is she going to see the Pilgrim again, but she's like, at this juncture, she still thinks, I will get to the bell tower and either it will fix me or I will just come back here and talk to the sage and live out my life as a student of theirs. Just an important thing to note. This goodbye needs some work. And once it's all wrapped up, oh, baby. Oh, Nelly. We get to chapter 35. Are you ready? Are y'all ready for next week? I'm not. There's so much nonsense we have to talk about with chapter 35. I told y'all at the start of the chapter, it's only 15 pages. We just got through 17 pages. It only took us 2.5 hours. Honey, y'all don't know. There's a supplementary text that I might have to get open. I didn't warn y'all about this. We might have 3 pages open next episode. Is going to be a doozy, right? I have to get into metaphysical philosophy. I have to get into quantum physics. Did y'all expect there to be quantum physics in your stupid fantasy book? I hope not, because that's a weird thing to expect. But that's next week's problem, folks. we did it. We got done chapter 34. There's a lot to fix. There is so much to fix from start to finish. But between writing Teal as a more believable individual, between having her doubt her dreams as memory or fiction, between her saying goodbye and her ruminations among the hills, amid her disgust and her agitation over the judgment of what might be her ancestors, over her meeting and initial quarrel with the pilgrim, over the reveal of their information. There's so much we need to address and fix, but I think if we tackle all of it earnestly and carefully and passionately, this episode will just shine so much brighter throughout the entirety of the book. Right? I don't know. As it stands right now, like, okay, chapter 34. Teal could realistically just omit this. Teal could just walk to the bell tower and we could just go to chapter 35. But I think, much like how we kind of need chapter 33, we need chapter 34 to exist as a beacon, a very bright stepping stone that Teal has to take before she gets to the bell tower. Not only does the pilgrim point her in the right direction, but we see sides of Teal in this chapter that we haven't before. And I think that's really important, that we see all aspects of Teal, even the parts of her that maybe aren't very clean, maybe the parts of her that are rough and tumble, that we get a little taste for them here so that we know Teal as a deep and complex and three-dimensional character. Very multifaceted. So that later on, when we get to learn other parts about her, we go, oh. And then when she changes as an individual, we appreciate that, right? We appreciate that she has depth and nuance and that she still is capable of change, right? Isn't that what it's all about? Changing for the better. Maybe not. I don't know. I just wrote the book. What do I know? Not a lot. But that's chapter 34, folks. That's episode 24. Thanks for coming. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I really need to finish this glass of water. And then I'm going to close my eyes for about 20 minutes and just try not to scream. For anybody watching the VOD, thanks for coming. Thanks for making it through all 2 hours and 45 minutes. I hope you enjoy the rest of your whatever. I hope everyone enjoys their upcoming weekend. We'll be back streaming Zelda on Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Check in if you like Zelda. Otherwise, I hope you eat something good. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.